Today on FIL TV, we talk to a woman who has dedicated her life to peace. On July 7th, 2005, her life changed forever. She was on the same carriage underground in London as a suicide bomber. Now, she miraculously survived but lost both her legs, but she's gone on to do some amazing things. She's the organiser of a not-for-profit organisation called Mad for Peace. She's won a gazillion awards, and she's pretty darn funny. We're talking to Gill Hicks. Now, I've been thinking of ways to introduce you, Gill, and there's so many words that come to mind. There's author, speaker, advocate, survivor, mum. I'm intrigued to know what words you would use to describe and introduce yourself.
I think probably for me, it would be absolutely a mum first. And then it would be someone who feels a great need to communicate. So I would say that I am a communicator, and a communicator of all the things that I feel are the important messages based on experience that I would love to see humanity sort of respond and be all I know it to be, and to be as great as I know it can be. Yeah. And I think that floats back into being a mum as well, because I see the responsibility of being a mum is bringing up, the next wave of contributing brilliant adults. So, yeah.
Yeah, and we've had previous chats, and you have quite a sense of humour, if I would put it. Now, is that something that has developed, as you would call it, in your second life, or is that something you've always had and people have always known you for?
I think it's something I've always had. It was quite funny actually when my brother was flown over to the UK, to London, to be with me in hospital. And one of the first things that he observed that I remember he was saying to the medical teams was, "Oh, no, look, she's absolutely fine because she's just been making the same bad jokes that she was making before." So he knew that I was still Gill, despite, all the horror.
And then if we do flash back to that day, July 7th, 2005, can you just give us a little bit of a rundown of what happened that day?
Day, what I've thought about a lot, and it's 15 years, and it's really interesting how over the space of 15 years, you think about the different angles of an experience, life-changing moment for me that I've kept retracing and rethinking. If only I'd, been 2 minutes later, if only I took another 5 minutes to get ready. It's these tiny little increments of time that made a significant difference. But even so, when I explored where I was standing in the carriage, if I was just a centimetre, in a different position, I might not be here now. So again, it's all these tiny little moments that have really stuck with me about how precious every second, minute is, because it actually does make a difference. And again, I guess the fury in me is that I was a workaholic. I was the person that was religiously at my desk at 7:30 every morning. I had a coffee club that I'd meet everyone at in Covent Garden at 7. We used to drink coffee. I used to have a little cigarillo cigar, and then I'd be at the desk at 7:30. And this was the one day that I was out of my routine. And so everyone that knew me, when all of this started to unfold, absolutely, no one was worried about me at all, because they just said, well, Jill will be in her office. That's where she always is. So it was a shock to everyone when I was the only person in a building of just over 200 staff, I was the only person to not come in that day. And as it started to reveal, as the hours ticked by and the days ticked by, because I was essentially, I had no means of identifying myself, and so no one knew who I was. And chillingly, and again, something that's gone on to shape my absolute thinking about how I create a second life was how I was labelled that morning, which was really still quite chilling to talk about it, but it was just 4 words that were put onto a hospital armband, and it said, "One unknown, estimated female." And I just, even now, I just will never forget looking at those words and having that realization of, I guess, 2 things really. Firstly, just the state in which my body must have been in to have been labelled and such. And I think secondly, of the appreciation of how everybody that did so much to save me did so regardless of who I was. And so it's really the crux of that that's gone on to inform me of what's possible, what I need to hold on to, as in all the beautiful and good, and how I start to look for my way through to create a very different and unexpected second life.
And you've said you were on that, when you were on that train, you weren't actually sure whether you were still alive. And in that moment, you've said you thought, okay, if I come back, life isn't going to be the same. And you would have a certain responsibility. At that time, you didn't know what that responsibility would be. Now, is Mad for Peace that responsibility that you've taken on?
I think so. I think the any iteration of Mad is honouring the vow I made whilst I was still in that scene, in that tube, that morning, waiting to be rescued. And it was, very strong for me, still is to this day, of if I'm fortunate enough to have the gift of life back, then I need to honour that gift. And for me, honouring the gift is communicating the brilliance of us, communicating the importance of us seeing each other as human beings first and all our other differences secondary. The importance of, over the years, I've even started to pick apart the terminologies around, is it talking, utopia visions, and it's not something that can be reached. So I've tried to really move and stay fresh and keep rolling that communication forward to what will cut through. So I feel that my life's work is continuously exploring what's the cut through. How do I, talk to people in their hearts, in their minds, through their soul, through their being? What does it take to find those right pieces of communication to elevate our ideas of each other and of our time here? Our time here is so short, so brief, so precious, that do we really want to spend a day, hating, feeling miserable? Surely, I could use my life to convey those messages of live while you can, and live with impact, and live with greatness, and contribute, and leave a very light footprint across the earth, but contribute to it whilst you're here. I think that to me is what I'm meant to be saying.
And obviously you have said that you've been given the gift of life, but you've also given the gift of life with your beautiful daughter Amelie, who is 7. Now, has she changed the way that you do advocate at all?
She has. I think firstly, there's more urgency. I see an urgency in when I look at her of just how important it is that we create a world in which our little people can live with a different feeling of safety, a different feeling of connectiveness, a different feeling of what it means to be part of a humanity that is thriving on an earth. And I guess also it's hit home the cycle of our lives, that my life has gone on to create another life, that my life will end, her life please will continue, and the cycle goes on. So I think she's really brought that home to me. She's my greatest supporter and my fiercest critic, so that if I'm ever doing anything, she's the first to let me know, to say, no, that's not the right, that doesn't say enough to me. So she's amazing, actually. We had a little moment yesterday where I'm still the fun mum, and I play, and she just said to me on the way to school, actually, that's really embarrassing. Can you stop doing that? I just thought, this is it. This is that day. This is that day. And she said, why am I the sensible one? And I just thought, oh no, the day has come. So she's growing, and she's. I think she'll be a formidable force in the world.
And I guess she's at that inquisitive age as well. Has she asked why Mummy's legs are different, or why things are different with you guys?
Look, I mean, obviously I can't hide being a double amputee from her. So this is all she's known. I'm the only mum she's known. This is the only form of mum she's known. And we've grown with that. Yeah. We've grown with that. So, she went through a period when she was a lot younger where she thought I was perhaps part robot. So she thought that I was actually really cool because all the other mums at kindergarten, didn't have these robot legs, and she thought that was great. Yeah. And then she started to, ask questions, and I've never not told her the absolute truth. I've talked to her in terms of the person that did this made a deliberate choice, and that his choices were based on ignorance. And so I talked to her a lot around how important it is that the choices we make have an impact on the people around us, and they can have a wider impact from there. And to always make sure that you're not making decisions based from an ignorant point of view. So make sure that you're always educated, that you've always looked from an empathetic standpoint. And she gets it. She gets it. And she's gone from saying, understanding what ignorance is, that she feels that this 19-year-old suicide bomber was actually very gullible, because he believed what he was being told without questioning. And I just thought, wow, that's quite sophisticated for her to think that far around the idea of gullibility, which is, now I sort of say, well, I'm going to put that into my work with, looking at why do people hold on to extremist ideas? How do they become susceptible to it? And perhaps, there's a great deal of gullibility there at the core of it. So, we're growing with each other around the topic.
Yeah, it's quite interesting because when you do sort of give young people the tools to understand things, they actually end up teaching us things. And I think you've really just actually nailed that on the head, which is very interesting.
I listen to her as well, so she knows that I completely respect her opinion, and even though she's only had 7 years of life, that she's wise in areas that perhaps I've lost my inner child about. So I listen to her when I need to remember that inner child for me.
Yes, and you're going to bring some of that fun with your Fringe show that's next year, which is super exciting. No, it's going to be great. I mean, we've had a year, so I am so excited to be able to have some fun and positivity. Can you tell us a bit about what that Fringe show actually is going to entail?
So the show's called Still Alive and Kicking. And the whole premise is, you know, it's to talk through a narrative of the appreciation of life, particularly from my standpoint of having been technically gone, so dead for just under 30 minutes, and how that's completely shaped my appreciation, but also for the year that we've had in 2020. So I'm sort of almost desperate to be able to just, for the audience to be sitting there and for me to say, we made it, we're still alive, here we are. And it's narrative punctuated with some jazz favourites. There's absolute permission to laugh your head off, to cry if you want. But I'm hoping that people will leave just feeling a little more purposeful, a little more optimistic. Life is, it's amazing to be able to feel, and it's amazing to be able to experience. And I'm a great believer. I think if ever I was going to have a tattoo, it would just be, this too shall pass. That would be my words. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
a great believer in it. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I mean, I could go on forever and ask you 1,100 questions, but we'll leave it there. Thank you so much for chatting to us. And
thank you, Kat.
Keep being mad.
Yeah. Stay mad. Stay mad.